webinar of openEHR Netherlands. We're very welcome to our Dutch guests and of course also our international guests who are joining us. Very happy to see so many of you subscribe to this meeting, and we expect a nice set of presentations and perhaps afterwards also a good discussion. Before I'll get started, it already said it in the screen, this webinar will be recorded. It is our intention to distribute this webinar recordings after the meeting so that you can watch it back or can share it with anybody who you would like to share it with. So that said, if you don't want to be on the webinar, mute your sound, put off your microphone, put off your camera, and that will be okay. If you have any questions or any remarks, you can raise your hand during the meeting. We'll also take a couple of questions after each presentation, but we'll do a short, a little bit longer discussion after both presentations have been held. So today, I'll do a short introduction. I already started with that. And then Martin Grundberg from Cambio will show us his vision on Cambio and openEHR. And then we're very happy also to have from PatientSky, Laus Wilster. And he will talk about the operating system for healthcare based on their PatientSky 360 platform. So we're very happy to have them here, share with us their ideas on openEHR and open platforms and how to build healthcare records and patient healthcare records on top of those. So the stichting, the foundation openEHR Netherlands was founded a year ago, and we'd like to share knowledge as to one of our primary objectives. We had planned to do that through a seminar here in the Netherlands, but of course, because of COVID, we couldn't do that. So we've now set up a series of openEHR related webinars. We'll go into back into that in a bit. And the other thing that we're doing is trying to integrate with the Dutch healthcare standards. And one of those standards is the ZIPS, which is the Dutch Healthcare Information Building Blocks. HASINs, they're also called. They're translated in English, so you can look them up on the internet. And we have formed a working group to translate those in sort of reference models for how to implement those in openEHR. And that work is underway. We're happy with that. So for those who don't know openEHR, I know it's a mixed group, so we'll very shortly introduce openEHR to you. Most of you will know. Some of you are new, so we'll try to explain it in 2 or 3 slides. So openEHR is an open standard specification. So it's a specification. It's not a system as such. It's a specification for a healthcare system, and especially aimed at storing data in uniform international information models. At openEHR, the idea is that we store the data for the lifetime of the patient in information models that are vendor independent and person centered at the e-health records. And what we mean by that, explain in the expression that we borrowed from Better, is that like for the images where you have a standard format, the PACS system, the DICOM standard for inter-exchange, and the PACS the PACS kind of systems, you would like for structured data to have a data format that is uniform across all systems that are using it, so that at some point you can build different applications based on the same standard specifications, and nobody has to worry about their data being, say, stored in a fixed proprietary model where you cannot get it out, or it's very hard to get data out of your healthcare system. The idea is that with openEHR, you have a platform that is based on a set of standards which would make it very easy to switch from one openEHR implemented to another. And I forgot so let me get back. There are multiple openEHR vendors available, people who sell the platforms as well as people who try to make applications on top of those. There's a whole list available. openEHR itself is a set of specifications and models about archetype, building blocks, a reference model, which holds all the information that is necessary. But you would not model yourself. Then you can have queries on top of that to search data, and you have templates to implement use cases. And very important, when you have an openEHR system, there's also an openEHR open API, which all providers have to adhere to. And with that set of specification, openEHR is trying to create a system, an open platform where you can exchange data from one platform holder to the other without having to do major migrations, etc. That's just a small thing about openEHR. There's much more to tell about that. We'll do that in other sessions, and you can find a lot of information online on openEHR.org. Let me just introduce the next sessions as well, so that you know what's available. At the 6th of November, we have a session on open ecosystems where Rachel Dunscombe and Erik Vermeulen from EY Health, and Rachel is from openEHR itself and from NHS in the UK. Explain about innovations based on an open ecosystem. That's on the 6th of November, and on the 27th of November, we'll have a session on the HIMED project, which brings 7 German hospitals together on one open platform, and it's trying to get those hospitals to work together. This will be a very interesting subject. On the side, they're also building a open source openEHR implementation platform, so they'll talk about that as well. For now, I'd like to get back a little bit to the planning for today. I'll give the word to Martin in a minute to start his presentation on Cambio and openEHR, and afterwards we'll listen to Laus Bilster, and in between we'll take a couple of questions after the presentation, but not too much. I'll stop sharing now, and then Martin can take over.
Thank you, Walter. Let's see if I can. There we go. Okay, can you see my desktop, the presentation? And can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, so my name is Martin Grunberg, and I work for Cambio as I work with informatics, a lot involved in our product strategy, involved in moving to openness and implementing openEHR as part of that. And just I'll start with a brief introduction to Cambio. So we deliver integrated solutions for regional healthcare and also social and welfare, social care and welfare. Our systems have around 170,000 users in different countries, and also the core design in our applications they're designed for regional and publicly funded healthcare systems. So that's where we come from, and these are some of the history of the company. So Cambio was founded in Sweden in a city called Linköping in '93. So we've been doing this for 30 years or so. In 1998, we won our first regional customer in Sweden. And the regions, the setup in Sweden is the regions cover both acute and primary care, and the social care and welfare is a separate national body, or governed by separate national bodies. And in 2003, we expanded to outside Sweden. So we now have customers in, for example, Denmark and in the UK as well. In 2017-18, we widen our product offering by acquiring introducing welfare and social care into our product suite, and also a set of integrated CDS, clinical decision support solutions. And I think some of you might be familiar with Rong Chen, who's been heavily involved in the openEHR community for a long time. He also works for Cambio and he's responsible for our decision support products. Last year, Cambio won a big procurement in Sweden. It's called the SUSA deal. It was roughly, I think it's 8 or 9 regions that went together and procured for an EHR. Openness was, of course, there's a lot of focus on information sharing and openness and standardization in that procurement. So that makes us the leaders in Scandinavia in our area. We've also recently added entails, a Danish company, to our Cambio group, and they do intensive care solutions. We now have an intensive care and anesthesia support in our product offering as well. So that's sort of the rough Cambio history. And this is just a visualization of where we exist today. So in Sweden and Denmark and the UK are sort of our core markets, and then we have some interesting customers in the Faroe Islands, in Greenland and New Zealand. We're big on islands, so that's roughly how where we have our customers today. So, and the products that we offer, our solutions, as I mentioned, it's a focus on regional healthcare and social care. So we support acute, primary, mental health, social and student care as well. So they use our products, for example, in schools as well. The main products we have the main EHR is called Cambio Cosmic. And we have Cambio Cease is our intensive care product. Cambio Viva is our product for social care and welfare, and of course our clinical decision support products. And then we have sort of additional applications. We have Cambio Nova, which is used for it's a mobile application that's used on top of the EHR, for example on iPads. And My Health is our patient app. We always try to focus on, even though openEHR is focusing on the informatics and the data quality, we also need our applications to be supporting the healthcare processes and the users at all times. So we focus a lot on process support, and of course interoperability and openness and sharing of data. Patient empowerment, clinical decision support, mobility are also all things that drive us in our development and design of our products. Yeah, I think so this is just another visualization where our products are used, and of course in most countries or most situations you will have different products and used in these areas. So the having a common information model is important for sharing data. You shouldn't have to rely on just having one system. So the ecosystem of having a working ecosystem is important, and for that you need the standardization. So when it comes to openEHR and Cambio and our sort of journey to openness, I think our EHR Cosmic, it's built on a HISA standard. So it was built with openness in mind, and then of course these type of products, they evolve over time. And in early or so mid, somewhere around 2005, 2010, we got a lot involved in the openEHR community. You started looking at how we can use openEHR in our EHR and other products to solve various types of business needs. And I would say somewhere around 2015, I think we had our first implementation of openEHR in our EHR. We have our CDS products as well, which utilize openEHR. But this is for our main EHR. And the problems we had before we did this was we needed a central repository for, the core clinical parameters in a system, your blood pressures and pulses and temperatures and these type of things. And we also needed a standardized definition of them across our different customers. So that was sort of the main driver for starting with openEHR, or at least the main benefits that it had in our product. And today we're sort of looking to improve this and evolve and improve the capabilities of our openEHR backend and the CDR capabilities. And we have been for a long time, but we are an industry partner to openEHR, which we're very proud of. So we've been involved in the openEHR community for a long time. Okay, so why is Cambio committed to openness and openEHR? So I think Wouter mentioned a few of these things, but I think it's very important. When a baby gets born today, you get your first medical record, and that record is continuously added to and is used as a basis for clinical decision making over that person's lifetime. So that's roughly around 100 years. So the information life cycle is, spans over lifetime. That's far longer than, an EHR life cycle. So the information needs to outlive the implementing system. And so that's sort of the length of the information, but it's also the case that people travel a lot. Us Europeans, we like to move around and travel to our neighbor countries. And of course, the information you have in your record, it should be available, or ideally should be available even if you travel and move. And that also requires the information to be detached from the system implementation. So both sort of from a lifespan of information, also the transferability of information, the information models need to be system agnostic. So that's sort of the main driver. And to do that, we only see one way forward. I mean, you need to standardize in some way, standardize the content, and you need this separation of the information models from the implementing system with the multi-level modeling method, so you can model in clinical concepts separate from any implementing system. And you need a common shared repository of information models and guidelines for the core concepts that you need. And as far as we can see, there's only one option for this, and that is openEHR. So that is why we are working so much with openEHR in our products. So and I think it's important to look at the benefits a lot, because it's easy to get into the technical side of things or the informatics details. But so what is this? What benefits does it bring of using openEHR? And I think you can slice this in different ways, but one way of doing it is sort of looking at, well, what type of benefits does openEHR have to the healthcare applications or our products? And another aspect is, well, what are the benefits for our customers, or the healthcare providers, or the social care providers, and potentially the patients as well? And what are the benefits for the vendor, for us? So when it comes to the product benefits, I think it increases the quality in the system. So I mean, the design, a lot of the design is done, or today is done by, engineers or software designers of different roles. But here we can shift it more towards design by domain experts, which increases the quality. We increase quality by being able to reuse information in the system, and also it makes it easier to maintain a system over time, because the content is standardized, it's well documented, and these type of things. Then of course it enables lots of advanced functionality. We don't get it for free, but if you're basing your system on openEHR, it allows you to do lots of things that would otherwise not be possible, or it would be much more difficult. So I mean, just the ability to search in the clinical data using AQL as an example, it enables lots of good features for presentation purposes. You can present information for users in a good way. It enables decision support because the information is defined. You get better contextual UI forms because you can use templates to create, the user input requirements. It's much easier to do external APIs, for example, so you can enable integration. Well, then there's the area of task planning, for example. It's easier to do things like process support, and so also lots of things that it enables us to do with the openEHR sort of tooling and openEHR data structures. And then you have the benefits for the care providers. And one of the things that our customers push a lot is being able to collaborate and cooperate between regions and countries. So you can share your resources to create various types of templates and models, for example. Today, a lot of this work is done isolated at each region. Then they can share that sort of burden of modeling and configuration. And then all the tooling around openEHR also makes that easier. Of course, you have the vendor neutral data model, which openEHR provides. And of course, that allows the customers or the care providers to actually use the data and recognize the data without the vendor being involved. The data is sort of recognizable for them. Of course, the value today, there's so much value in data today. So being able to use your data and interpret it has big value. And of course, no vendor lock-in, or at least reduced vendor lock-in. When you procure a system, it's a huge commitment for care providers, and commitment over many years. So what happens if you don't like the system you've bought, or you want to plug in some additional application for some niche area? That is much easier if you have a common data model. So it reduces the vendor lock-in, and then hence reduces the risk and increases the flexibility for care providers. And then for us as a vendor, of course, the benefits to the product are important, but we can see efficiency savings, for example, in how we do design and development, because we can reuse artifacts like the archetypes. A lot of the things today are programmed, coded into the system. We can now just take and import dynamically into the system instead of actually having coders and developers to implement them. And of course, it makes it easier for us as a vendor to go into new markets, and also we can reuse work that's done in other countries. That's why it's so fun to be here with openEHR Netherlands. So those are some of the benefits. And then there's also some challenges. I think there is an EHR system has complexity that is not, I think, captured when you look at openEHR in a sort of a more of a theoretical or project-oriented setup. Or if you look at a just using openEHR as an external data repository to the EHR, where you can transfer data to, using openEHR in an EHR context, a regional EHR context, comes with some complexity that either is not initially recognized or not sort of supported by openEHR. So there is some challenges there. I think this is another one where you have, if you use openEHR, you're used to doing your modeling, and you're used to doing, well, you work with the tooling to do information models, but information models is not everything. You need terminology, you need decision support guidelines using GDL, for example. Sometimes we can see traces of, you only use the archetypes as the only tool available for solving certain problems, which maybe, so you model in things like decision support rules into the information model rather than having a separate GDL guideline which you can reference, things like that. Also, that when you work with an enterprise EHR, you need to have patterns in modeling and design consistent across the system, and that's sometimes also difficult when an archetype or a template is created in more of a project sort of setup. So it's important to have a consistent design and pattern for modeling if it is to be used in a larger scale, I would say. And then there's a challenge of getting archetypes into a verified version 1. It's easy to start projects and you create models, but they get stuck in a version 0. So getting archetypes into a version 1, I think, is a challenge, because knowing us as a vendor, we will have customers that want us to deliver things, and if we have a dependency to wait for the whole international community to review and create the version 1, and that takes years, we will create something on our own, and others will as well. So I think we need to focus our efforts on speeding that up. But I think these are all exciting challenges, I think, and they're all solvable. And I think we can, by having these type of presentations in a international context, we can start building, connecting people and working together to solve some of these things. Yes, so I think that was it. And thanks for listening. And those are the contact details for either me or Cambio.
Very good. Thank you very much, Martin. And you're right on time. Really impressive to hear.
Yes.
Right on schedule.
Thank you.
We have time for a couple of questions. Does anybody want to ask a question? Quite difficult. Just put on your mic and ask away. Yeah, well, let me just kick this off a little bit with these last challenges are really really interesting things that we also in this working group that we have see now how to get things to a V1 state. Those are interesting questions, and I think we're going to solve them. What was interesting for me as well is that you are committed to this openEHR and so well committed. Did you already get hospitals or care providers that specifically chose your program because you have this openness? Is this really breaking these barriers for you in the market?
Yes, I think I would say so. It was a big part of us winning the big Swedish SUSA procurement. The ability for us to deliver open solutions. Then I think I don't think an openEHR a fully open-air based EHR has not been, I think, part of not been at least a core piece of any procurement or has not been a core requirement from any new customer. But I think that will come, and we need to be prepared for that.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think. I hope this idea of an open platform will get into procurement questions. That's actually what we.
Yeah, I think we can see that as well. There are initiatives in multiple countries around this area. It's a culture change also for the care providers. You know, how you work with applications, and you need to set up your organization to deal with this type of well, if you want to work with open-air, you need to invest in doing the informatics work and collaborating and these type of things.
Totally agree. Don't know, are there any questions? If not, we'll go to the next presenter.
Yeah, I have
yes, Joost, you can ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for your interesting story. I would like to ask, could you elaborate a bit on the migration? Because you said previously you worked from non-open-air data model based applications. I was wondering, like, how much of your data currently is stored in open-air format? Did you do a full migration, or are you underway? Could you share a bit about your approach, how you approach this problem from like transferring to open-air based CDR?
Yeah. So currently, our EHR, main EHR, by no means is fully sort of open-air compliant. We have a subset of basically clinical data that we store using open-air archetypes. But that's what we're looking at extending. And migration is, of course, a really tricky question, because you need to, in some way, keep the history of data that our customers or the care providers have. And there are, of course, methods in open-air for this. You have I think what's called generic entry, or you can look at things like that for mapping current document structures and so on to that. And you can look at utilizing maybe existing, code bindings, if there are, ICD-10 or Snowman and things like that has been used for identifying information or defining information even in the proprietary format. But this is a tricky question, and it needs to be, I would say, assessed on a case-by-case basis. What data you want to migrate, or do you need some type of, just read view on the old data? And there's no sort of silver bullet there for the migration, I think.
Hope that answers your question, Joost. Then
can I ask a follow-up question?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Can we do that with another?
Yeah, sure.
Introduce. Is it Laus? How should I pronounce it? Actually, your name. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask before. Before the presentation.
Laus is perfectly.
Oh wow, good. It's pronounced in the Dutch way. That's good. From PatientSky, and yeah, I would say just go ahead, start your presentation.
Okay, thanks. See if I can share my screen here. Okay. All right, do you guys see it?
Yes.
I see a thumbs up, and you can hear me as well. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. So first of all, thank you for having me, giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm Laus Axelsen. I'm the Chief Product Officer for PatientSky. And yeah, so what is PatientSky, and how does that kind of fit into the whole openEHR thing and healthcare in general, I suppose. So our vision is that we want to create faster, cheaper, better care. So what does that mean? It means that we want to be able to create care faster, so we don't have these slow processes over years, potentially having only big companies providing value. We want small companies to provide value as well. Cheaper in the sense that, well, we want to lower these barriers again, and then have a high iteration and high competition within the space. And we want to create better, which is also in terms of having structured data and making sure that things are not lost in transactions. And as Martin already said, that very important that you can kind of have that record over the lifespan of those patients for about 100 years or so, potentially even more if you want to like make sense of that data afterwards. It has value, obviously, after people also are stop breathing. So that's the vision: faster, cheaper, better care. So we've created something that we've called the PatientSky 360 platform. So this is an ecosystem in which we can create the apps, modules, and it's also an ecosystem in which can be connected to other systems or providers. So we mainly focus on primary care. So this also connects to secondary care and has message exchange services and that sort of thing. So it's a kind of an open system, you can say, where you can build apps inside it and then reuse the clinical data models in the core of it. So typically when people talk about this stuff, they're always like, so is it a fancy installation? Do you need a lot of servers and then a lot of wiring, and how do you install this? And the answer is that no, you don't really need anything of that nature. It's a complete web-based solution. You don't install anything. There's no hardware per se. In the PatientSky 360 platform, it's a website that you go to and authenticate for the clinicians. And for the patients, it's very important for us at PatientSky to focus on the patients as well, because in our opinion, they're the most unused resources in healthcare, and they can also provide a lot of value both for the clinicians, but obviously also for themselves. So from their point of view, we have created a web-based patient portal, and we also have an app mainly used in Norway with about, I think it's 1.8, maybe 1.9 million patients on that. And you see an example of it here on the right, which is like a video doctor thing that we did a few years back. It wasn't that popular 2 years ago, but something happened this year and suddenly it became quite popular. So it was really cool to kind of see that we could provide that under the circumstances that came this year. So really, really nice to kind of be able to do that. So I like doing DIY project with my son. So the picture that you see in the background is a small Raspberry Pi where we were playing around with some pumps. And then I tried the other day just to figure out, like, can I actually open a browser on the Raspberry Pi and run PatientSky? And it runs perfectly fine on that browser as well. So just an example of diminishing kind of the entry barrier for actually running this application. So in theory, you could just have a lot of Raspberry Pis out there in the space and they could run the web application on that. So yeah, like doing DIY projects, if anybody's interested in that. Okay, so our customers, who are they and what do they do? Well, we have a wide range of customers using the applications as of today. We have doctors and obviously secretaries, physiotherapists, chiropractors, psychologists, obviously also a lot of patients. Again, in my opinion, they're the most unused resource in healthcare. So like facilitating and enabling them to lift some of the administrative burdens, both in terms of the clinical stuff, but also the administrative stuff is truly key, so that the doctors can do and the others can do their work, and nurses, lab personnel, etc., etc. So different variety. We're mainly focused in Norway and mainly within primary care. So everything in the PatientSky 360 platform, or at least all the clinical stuff, has been based off openEHR. I guess it's not a surprise since this is an openEHR conference. So this is a picture from Adoptie.nl, which is a project in Norway where they've done some clinical modeling. A very nice project. So when we started out in 2014, the Norwegian projects were not that mature, so we could use a lot from here, but we also had to look into the international space and got a lot of really good help from, I think Ian is on the call here. So we kind of had to do some stuff ourselves at this point in time because we were a little early in the Norwegian scenario, at least. So it helped us a lot, and also understanding how data works and what sort of information were important in an international scale. So at PatientSky, we are very focused on the international expansion. We're not as big as Cambio or any of those, but we definitely want to take that platform into a multiple regions, and therefore it was important for us to have that knowledge on how healthcare records look in the international way, you can say. So we based it on openEHR, and it was a really at the beginning kind of a steep curve to kind of understanding the complexity of the ecosystem and how everything works, but I think it was a very good investment going forward. And right now we're expanding, and we're seeing that kind of paying off now. So so it was very nice being on that ride pretty early on. So innovation loves startups, and I mean, we really want to be able to facilitate startups. I myself have been involved in a few, and I know the barriers that there is in healthcare if you want to create any sort of value. It is extremely difficult. And because I've tried that, because the founders in PatientSky has tried those barriers, we saw that the big potential for the future, really cool things in this space. If you want to go for, I don't know, AI, ML, big data, whatever fancy word you want to go for, I mean, that will most likely come from these really cool startups somewhere, and we need to be able to facilitate them to be able to provide that value. And you can do that if you have structured data, and then obviously an ecosystem on top, and that's the space that we want to be in. So we always kind of say that no company can build everything. We need to be able to work together in this sector, both cross primary and secondary, but also within that ecosystem, so that we can lower the barriers for each other. I think I did a talk earlier last year about don't build boilerplate. It's kind of the same concept here. So we can't build everything, and let's help each other out. So the monolith, as we see it, is not really the future. We want to have these small independent companies providing that value on a platform. And the barriers that we encountered, and also the barriers that we see in this space is, I mean, we can take hosting, a pretty simple thing, but hosting data, healthcare data, is not that simple. And what are the regulations? Where does it reside? Can you use stuff like Azure? Do you need to host it physically yourself somewhere? Can you rent space? Not everybody is as big as Cambio, so us small vendors kind of have to figure all this stuff out, and there's a steep learning curve on that, and legal curve, and how you rig your organization for that. You got things like presence. How do you know which users are online if you want to create workflows? There's a lot of infrastructure for this stuff. You got audit logs, so obviously you need to record when people access clinical data. I mean, that's part of the whole concept here, and doing that is actually pretty hard. So as a startup, you don't know this stuff, and you need to be kind of helped along that way. And obviously the big one here, terminology, everybody talks about it. It's like a myth in some ways. I mean, would you go for like ICD-10, ICPC2? It kind of depends on the segments, and what about the more international American things that are coming as well. So we built our own terminology server and providing that through the platform, so you don't have to build that every single time. The terminology server, in my opinion, is one of the cornerstones of any piece of healthcare information that you have today. Extremely important, and I've never really understood why nobody kind of created a centralized version of that everybody could kind of hook onto. But yeah, so we created that inside the ecosystem as well. And obviously things like authorization, authentication in different countries, it works in different ways. You need to make sure that you have the highest level of security, but also that, I know in Sweden it's called bank ID. It kind of has the same thing in Norway. In Denmark it's called NemID. So all of these things are barriers, and if you want to create software that goes across borders, you need to be able to have a very flexible adaptation of that. And providing that as a small startup is also kind of tedious, because like, how do you get the approval? How do you get it into your stack and certificates and all these things? And even like things that should have belonged in the past. I mean, paperless society, right? Printer services, but in healthcare today, printing is still a pretty important thing, at least for some players, and building printing drivers and that stuff there, I mean, that can be super tedious for startups as well. So you kind of wanted to provide all of that heavy lifting inside the applications or the ecosystems that we've built. And obviously installation, I mean, if you do on-prem stuff as well. So how to kind of lower those barriers? I think I already kind of opened up that thing, but what we've done and what we kind of hope the future goes for is creating these ecosystems. and then having these ecosystems kind of connect to each other in a nice way, potentially sharing through concepts like openEHR, but at least having these ecosystems so that people who are these innovative small companies can create value inside that space, because they will not be able to compete with the huge players. What we do is that we enable the clinics to kind of choose between solutions. I mean, if you have two modules, two apps inside the PatientSky platform, who does the same thing? Let's take in the journal writing mechanism, right? So maybe for a doctor, it works in one way, maybe for the physiotherapist, it works in another way, and maybe for the oncologist, a third way. And it might be on the same clinic, right? They might be working with the same patient, but they might need 3 different apps. And how do you kind of get that work nicely together? So either you can do one app and create something I usually call feature-itis, just punch in a lot of features and then it ends up being a pretty bad module. Or you could do multiple apps and maybe even provided by multiple companies inside this ecosystem, because we all kind of have our knowledge. Maybe some companies are really good with oncology, maybe another company would be super good for GPs and etc. So everybody can kind of provide their own thing within this ecosystem and potentially play around with the data on that same patient record in different ways, different views, etc. So how does it kind of work? I suppose that a lot of people on this call is a bit techie, like myself. I normally don't wear a suit, just to kind of stress that. It's not a thing that I do. I'm typically like a guy in the basement with the APIs. But yeah, so obviously based on openEHR, I guess that's why I got the opportunity to speak today. But we're also we like FHIR. FHIR is a really nice way of exchanging information. openEHR is a bit more verbose in many ways. It also have different cool things about it. And we saw that the exchange of information through FHIR is also a pretty good way, pretty fast way of implementing stuff. Mostly we use that if we do external integrations. And yeah, so I wrote REST APIs. They're actually not REST, but yeah, so they're APIs, but yeah, not really true REST-ish. So we have this documentation site through the partner platform, and then they can go in there and look up how things kind of work out and do the implementation, either if they do inside the ecosystem or if they do outside of the ecosystem. So we kind of say that structured data plus the ecosystem, that's kind of the healthcare platform, and that's, for us, that's the unicorn that we strive for, want to go for. Yeah, so the PatientSky 360 platform. So how does this kind of work out? Because right now we're just talking a bunch, and like, what is that? What does it actually mean? How do you kind of melt all these things together? So this is a screenshot from the application for the clinic's perspective, and you see that there are actually several modules in play here. So we melt all of these applications together. So the economy module, not that openEHR-ish, but it's still a module in the space, and that works separately. It's its own stack. It has its own front end, its own back end, etc. You have the VoIP and the video there in the top. You have the portal module, which is kind of like the wrapper, and then the planner module in the bottom. And then we've created all the things that kind of ties that together UI-wise. So for the end customer, the clinicians, the doctors, the physiotherapists, the chiropractors, psychologists, whatever. So for them, it feels as one application, even though this might be provided by several companies. So the VoIP and video were built here in Denmark, and the economy module was built in Norway by a different team, and the portal was built by the whole PatientSky team, and the planner module has been built by several teams along the way, but could have potentially been built by any company. Another example would be this. So you see the EHR module on the left there. The problem list is a different module. You got the planner widget, different concept that modules can expose. And yeah, so it kind of just ties everything together. So it looks as one, but it's actually many applications running simultaneously in that browser. So we got a lot of different modules today. Again, we're kind of focused on primary care. So we don't have ward administration. We don't have that heavy stuff there, but we've focused on the primary care, so we kind of cross into those segments, and obviously the patients as well. And then we have some external integrations. I saw on the participant list that we have one of the people from Diagnostica here, so yeah, hi guys, thank you for the good collaboration so far. We also have other external integrations like Fürst or Melin or Dips, who's a secondary player here in Norway, a sygehuspartner, label printers, payment terminals, yeah, wide range of different things because there are different needs. So they kind of hook into the platform from the outside, you can say. So in our opinion, structured data is not the solution for fixing healthcare. I mean, openEHR is super cool. It's the foundation for fixing a lot of stuff, but it doesn't fix it by itself. And the ecosystem makes for this innovation, so for the faster, cheaper, and better care. And we truly believe it's the combination of having that structured data, whether it be openEHR or FHIR for that matter, but having that agreement on having structured data and combining that with the ecosystem. That is the unicorn that I think healthcare needs and what we're trying to push for. So yeah, that was kind of it for me, I think. Yeah. Oh yeah, if you want to do apps or do partnerships, right, you can go on to PatientSky.com and apply for a partnership and build the next really cool thing. We want to do stuff with AI, so if we have some AI experts out there, you're more than welcome to kind of apply. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Klaus. We have a couple of questions here that I can see. And I think Birger is the first one who asked a question directly to you. So Birger, could you ask a question yourself or should I read it for you? And for everybody, well, I'll read the question because I can see Birger. For everybody, we'll take the questions now. We'll maybe skip the discussion and take all the questions because there are a couple of questions also for Cambio, so we'll take them. But Birger's question was probably related to one of your last slides. What is the feedback of the startups and probably also other companies that need to connect to your platform, and how tightly coupled these apps are with your platform?
Well, it kind of depends whether they're third party, so they're outside the platform integrating in, or if they're inside the platform itself. So the first ones we did kind of in a closed pilot we did back in 2014, 15, 16. They were very tightly connected to us. They were like more or less part of an extension of the company. So we were constantly kind of building the ecosystem with them. So they're probably a bit of biased. The newer ones, I would say that I mean, everybody kind of want to create a new thing, right? Or maybe things that we haven't thought of. So there's we need to be very good at communication so that we can expose the right information in the right way. And what happens with healthcare is that it's not only about the clinical data. There's a lot of things evolving around the workflow when you build an ecosystem and how they can connect. So if they want to put a button in a specific place or create a specific workflow. So it is a very tight relationship that we have with these partnerships. So we have open Slack channels. We call each other more or less every day. So, I mean, it will take a few more years, I would say, before it will be in a state where we're not going to be talking with the people in that sense. But I think it's for the startups, I think it's been a really nice process for both them and us to kind of be able to constantly kind of expand the features and finding that right, you can say, level between how we should be able to be flexible and where we should stand our ground so that it doesn't end up in this featureitis scenario as already mentioned. So
yeah, well, sounds logical that you have to get used to also providing these kind of interfaces and connections. So that makes sense. I have another question from Pilar Ramesh, who asked, what does PatientSky think about smart on FHIR and CDS hooks? It's a very specific question. Is there an equivalent in the openEHR space where other apps have a standardized way to consume structured data?
Yeah, I mean, smart on FHIR is a thing that we're asked a lot about. We haven't, to be honest, we haven't worked that much on it. I mean, in theory, you could build apps inside the PatientSky that could take that advantage and hook it up to the data. We haven't done it that much yet. We did a few things a couple of years back. I think it was like growth scales for kids, if I remember correctly. There were some nice smart on FHIR examples for that. We played around with that, but we haven't commercialized that piece. So yeah. haven't done much yet. If you have nice things, I mean, it'd be awesome to do that.
Yeah, there was is there an equivalent in openEHR space where other apps have standard ways to consume structured data? I suppose openEHR has its API, and the idea is that you can hook up any kind of messaging or hooks or kind of things to that. I don't know if you have any experience with that, but that would be.
Well, not really. Again, so openEHR is very verbose. So I haven't seen like a nice ways of just taking that and then magically making it work with something of that kind. For me, I mean, we use mainly openEHR as the internal way of moving around the bits and pieces and transforming it. And then the typical way that the partners would work with the data inside the application would be using Fire, because it's very more lightweight, you can say, in many ways. There are some scenarios where openEHR, like the raw or the composition format, makes more sense. There's, for instance, what you write, the journal, that's very heavily pushed through in terms of the payload. But if you want to do like a record of an ECG or like a CRP, like a lab analysis, then they push it through the Fire APIs, because you have it's you need just a terminology code and a value, so it's quite easy.
Sure. Couple of questions also for Martin. If and you can always react. Yeah, it's right now. Anybody who wants to react, just put on your microphone and react, or put something in the chat. So a question from Grant Forrest. Very nice to see you in this meeting. Interested to hear about how Cambio are expanding into the peri-op care. There are lots of opportunities for archetype and template development in this area. I suppose that's the last thing is a statement, which you can agree to or not. But the first is the expanding into the peri-op care.
So I think we're actually at the moment building in sort of a next version of our theater management module, so to speak, that manages the perioperative process, and it's one of the trickier areas actually to apply openEHR to, at least from an enterprise EHR perspective, because you need to manage so many things in this process, from the original referral to the first appointments to ordering examinations and packages of activities, and then managing the theater cases maybe on a waiting list, or then the whole process with the anesthesiology, and it's a very complex process. I think parts of it are very suitable for openEHR and creating archetypes and templates, whereas some are of more process oriented and administrative character, which makes them a little bit more difficult to use openEHR for. But it's a very interesting area, and I think we're just looking at trying to get the it's called the ASA class to a version 1 now, which is used for anesthetic assessments. But that's not even it's a core thing. It's not in a version 1 state, and so these are the type of things that sometimes makes it more difficult for us to use openEHR for those bigger initiatives. But we would be happy to look into, and we will look into more on how openEHR can be used in the perioperative context.
Yeah, I had to switch my sound because my headphone, which I already said to the presenters, I forgot my headphones. So I'm using my wife's headphones, but they're out of battery. So I'm now switching to my phone. Hopefully the sound is okay. Another question that came up is, well, Joost had a follow-up question, yeah? Maybe Joost wants to ask it himself, or should I read it, Joost? Joost is going to ask himself.
Yep. Yeah, so for Cambio, maybe also for PatientSky, can you say a bit, I think we concluded that the barrier for entry to openEHR can be perceived as high because it's quite complex. Can you say something about like how much do you need to invest as a startup, or maybe a company with a legacy product? How much do you need to invest before you get some benefits?
I can start. I think short answer is a lot. if you have a legacy system, because introducing openEHR as part of your backend is a huge thing. From a product perspective, from an architectural perspective, from a culture perspective, and it's very healthcare domain specific. So it's difficult to get, developers that have experience with openEHR, and it's difficult to just get, generic developers to understand the concept of, proper information modeling. Sometimes they actually. It is a big investment. It's a learning curve for an organization, both on a vendor side and on a care provider side, I would say. And it also then depends on what type of application you are building. Are you building something smaller, only in the clinical domain? Then that, I think, makes openEHR more suitable. If it's, doing full process support with, all your administrative things as well, then that makes openEHR slightly less mature, at least. But I still think it's the long-term sustainable method. So it's a bit idealistic, but I think the correct and sustainable way.
Thanks. So I've got to put on my screen. Let's get one other question in. This one is, maybe Laust also wants to react actually to this question, or did you have an?
I think Martin did a great job. Starting off with the openEHR is a big decision. You can't and take you a while to kind of get your head around it, and not only getting your technical people around it. And it is quite heavy from the beginning, and that's also why I'm arguing that if you want to do something like that, and if you're starting from blank, you should probably put yourself on top of something or an ecosystem or something that kind of has that experience. Because when you do startups, if you want to start anything, you would typically want to focus on your value add and not focus 80, 90, 95% on just getting the base in there. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think so that's where openEHR also comes in. Yeah, and the vendors that provide openEHR platforms that can kickstart your development. Yes. Let's take another question. We're running a little bit late, but I think the questions are interesting, so I hope everybody likes it as well. Do you both Cambio and PatientSky serve the same region and the same customers using openEHR? And that's a question from Marlene. Maybe you can start, Laust. Do you know?
Well, not again. So we're mainly focused on primary care, and as far as I've been told, Cambio is mainly focused on secondary care, and they're also focused in countries that PatientSky is not that active in as of right now. I don't know why you're not that big in Norway, are you, Martin?
No, so I think we do focus on our EHR is also used and for primary care, but we don't currently have any customers in Norway. I know our CDS team has lots of initiatives in different places, but I don't think any currently in Norway. So no, I guess is the short answer to the question. Yeah. We don't share any customers or marketplace at the moment.
Okay. I think I went through all the questions. Is there anybody else who wants to ask a question? They can unmute now or be silent forever. I don't know, because we're closing up the session. If not, I think
if you cut and paste a little bit from the chat before you close down, then you have some answers to some of the questions there that we can't take orally.
Yeah, I can see Eric, you added some things to the chat. Very good, thank you. basically also how the API works on AirScape, yes, and Ian also mentions the EHR base, which is the product that is developed in Germany, which we'll have the session on the 27th as well, so that might be interesting. So if no more questions, then I would like to thank the speakers for their contributions. I think both very interesting stories on how you can use openEHR in an electronic health record system, and even in a ecosystem that you're developing at PatientSky. That's very interesting to see. I think it's a way forward that we want to do, even with all those challenges that can be in your way. We'll go forward, and I'll hope the Dutch users also get to see how this can work in the Nordic countries. With that, I would like to close the session. Thank all the guests for being here. We'll try to get the movie, the recording to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much, and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend,
Bye.
everybody.